I think regardless of your age, I think your first focus should be health, you know, health first, then work. Because if your health is not all right, you can't work and you could be working yourself to death.
Hello and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, but you think you're too old or your body won't cooperate or something like that, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community. A lot of them well over 50, and they are learning bass, having the time of their life playing music that they love. You should come join them and experience that incredible transformation for yourself because, as I always say, you're never too old to groove. My guest this week, I've been looking forward to this for a while, Mohini Dey. If you don't know Mohini Dey, where have you been? Mohini is a phenomenal electric bassist, arranger, producer, and vocalist, originally from Mumbai, India. Her remarkable skill and versatility across many musical genres are defining the boundaries of bass playing. Currently the bassist for Willow Smith, Mohini has worked with Steve Vai, Quincy Jones, Vinnie Colaiuta, Jordan Rudess, Marco Miniman, Dave Weckl, Stu Hamm, Victor Wooten, Stanley Clarke, and Bumblefoot, to name but a few. Merging her Indian musical roots with rock, funk, jazz, and metal, Mohini released her debut self-titled solo album in August 2023. After spending most of the year on tour with Willow, Mohini will soon be embarking on a European tour with guitarist Greg Howe. Hello, Mohini. So great to have you. Welcome to For Bass Players Only.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. I'm sure you've told this story before, but if you wouldn't mind telling it one more time for our audience, you have such an interesting story, background. I'd like to hear about your musical upbringing, how you were exposed to music, how you became a bass player. I know your father was involved in that, and I know you have a sister. So can you share those early days for us, that story?
Yeah, sure. I was 3 years old when my dad started teaching me how to play the bass. And my mom was a professional singer. She was trained in Hindustani classical. She was doing a lot of gigs with my dad, and they were both individually doing a lot of gigs with different bands at that time. They were originally from the city called Calcutta. They moved to Mumbai after they got married because both their families didn't like that they fell in love and disowned them. And so they both decided to carry their journey as a partnership, and they moved to Mumbai. Worked really hard, struggled a lot too, and had me and my sister, and they had big dreams for their kids. They wanted two kids, and my dad wanted his kids to be musicians, and so he started teaching me music. He had very unique ideas for the time that I was born. I was born in 1996, and at that time there were no female instrumentalists, so to speak. He knew a couple of musicians such as Carol Kay and, Esperanza Spalding, because, he would borrow CDs and DVDs and cassettes and, those sort of things from his friends, and bring home those cassettes and play me music, and would always surround me with music after school hours, before going to bed. Always made sure that I was in the right surrounding and environment. Whenever he would practice his bass, he would put the headphones on my ears because we didn't have like a bass amp. We weren't financially very strong at that time. So he had this like little guitar processor that he went through, and he put headphones on my ears while he would play his bass. And he started noticing that I had rhythm in me, and I started tapping the right tempo. And he decided that he would teach me how to play the bass seriously. I think I seriously started taking lessons by the age of 7. And by the age of 9, I was already professionally working with a lot of great musicians. And the first person that he took me to was Ranjit Barrett. And he kind of introduced me to the music industry in India. And I started playing with him, and that opened a lot of doors to many other people. He plays for John McLaughlin, right now. And at that time, he was producing for a lot of big movies and blockbuster, films and advertisements. And I was in his studio basically hanging out after my school hours and getting exposed to the kind of music that he was doing was like a master class in itself, I got to witness bass players like Dominic De Piazza and listen to Jonas Hellborg and uh, Richard Bona because of Ranjit Uncle, because he would play me those kinds of music, and he was playing with some of those bass players in his studio, and I would just get to witness that in real time. And so that was really, really cool. I think both my dad and Ranjit Uncle were played very vital roles in my life, and they were both like, a male figure, very important male, played a very important, almost like a father role. I guess I had two fathers in that sense, because that kind of shaped me into this person that I am today, those years of practicing with him on the drums. He was the first drummer I ever played with. And then that kind of led me to playing with Louis Banks, who is a jazz pianist from India. That led me to play with Niladri Kumar, who is a great sitar player in India, and then so on. The rest is history. I think at the age of 14, I played on Ranjit Uncle's album Baraboom, and that had many incredible musicians such as Zakir Hussain and Lenny Kravitz and a bunch of other great players like Yu Srinivas and Yu Rajesh and many more. And I started playing a lot of instrumental music and instrumentalists from the south of India, a lot of Carnatic musicians, and that was fascinating to me. And I started kind of shaping myself from that point onwards because I was so fascinated, and I wanted to sound like those South Indian musicians on their exotic instruments, and I wanted to sound like them. So I started training under Carnatic music. It was never like, I never went to music school. I never took lessons also just by, sitting in one room and just asking questions or anything like that. It was just, I was playing professionally. And while working with these musicians, I picked up on the fly, and and whatever I didn't understand, I would just ask them and they would tell me, oh, this is how it works, and that's how I kind of, learned over time and started applying those, tricks and tips and learnings to my bass playing. And that became kind of part of my sound, I guess. And that's why I think I am known to be a very technical bass player. And, I do a lot of konakol with my slap bass, and my album kind of represents that. And yeah, I mean, long story short, I started, putting those, aspects of my learnings into my music. And I wanted that to be showcased very well through my music. And I wanted to tell my story through my music. And I was able to do that through my album, through my debut album. And it had some of the most talented and renowned and legendary musicians, such as Narada Michael Walden and Gergo Borlai and, Bumblefoot and Daniel Shabeni, Mike Gothard, and I'm forgetting some names for sure, but all of those musicians that played on my album play a huge role, in showcasing my story. And I'm very grateful that I was able to release that album. And yeah, and there's more to come. I'm working on my second album at the moment and hope to release it soon.
Is it going to have as many notes as the first album? Because that could be a little scary.
No, I think this time I'm going to be. So when I write music, I don't think about notes. I think about the rhythmic aspect, because and of course the harmonic aspect. When I was writing for my debut album, the first song I wrote was when I was 13 years old. That was Introverted Soul. Obviously, as a 13-year-old, I'm not thinking, how many notes can I put in this one song? I'm just thinking about, oh, how can I make this song a little bit different from everything that has already been done? I think at the age of 13, I got to play with Zakir Hussain, and that was my first on the spot jam session. And hearing tabla was like, it kind of opened doors that had never opened in my mind. And I wanted to put the kanakal aspect in that song. And so I was like, oh, if I'm playing these lines and these jazz, lines, why can't I put the kanakal stuff on top of that? Or vice versa. So if you hear the intro, there are stabs that are being played by the whole band, but then there are these fast lines in between, and there's konakol on top happening. So there's so many ways of approaching just music in general. It's just, with me, I guess, because my foundation was heavily rooted in the Indian cultural diversity, my music represents that. And that may be, taken as, oh, a lot of notes, but I guess it's everybody's perspective, it's different. And
I meant
today
that in
we,
a, I meant that in a very kind way.
oh, I know. I think it's just, when you see a person online, it may seem like, wow, she's flashy and she can play really fast, and it's a lot of notes. For sure, it is a lot of notes. I agree. But there's music. There is music. It's not just a bunch of notes. There is a strong intention behind those notes, and there's a lot of soul and deeply rooted story and a lot of hardships and struggle in those songs. And I think people have felt to that, and that was my goal. And so if that means playing more notes on the second album, maybe that.
I've heard the album several times, and that stuff does come through. But I've got to say, that's an incredibly mature attitude and approach for going back to when you were 13 years old. Because I can remember being like 16, 17 years old, and I was trying to do the wrong things. I was trying to play Stanley Clarke and Anthony Jackson and those people. But
Yeah.
going back even further, you're 3 years old, or maybe a little older by then, but you're meeting, would you say, Dominic De Piazza and Richard Bona and
Yeah.
Jonas Hellborg? I mean, you probably thought everybody played as well as those guys because those were your first influences. Was there anybody else that got your attention? Any bass players, any influences at the early stage?
I mean, those three bass players were the first bass players I got to witness in person, I would say. But before that, I was already listening to Jacob Pastorius and Victor Wooten and Stanley Clarke and Stuart Ham and Billy Sheehan and, a bunch of drummers like Carter Buford, Dennis Chambers, Vinny Colaiuta, Dave Weckl, and many, many more. And bands such as Chick Corea Electric Band and Weather Report and, even Michael Mandarin, the way he played the fretless bass. And my dad always, I guess, exposed me to various different kinds of music and musicians as a way to inform me and be aware that, that your instrument is really unlimited and you can shape it the way you want it. But yeah, the generation he came from tied him into ways where he wanted me to do certain things, but then couldn't get out of his own ways because he wanted me to do those things in his way only. And if I do it my way, then it's wrong, because obviously that's how it, I guess, works when in India, when the musicians try to teach you something, especially I would speak from my experience. Maybe it's not okay to speak from other people's experiences, but my experience, Bengalis, my mother tongue, Bengali families are very strict families. We have a very strict culture and we have certain things that are taught from a young age, like this is how you do things and this is not how you do things. And this is respect, this is disrespect. And you need to have discipline and structure in order to get what you want. That's freedom. But then it has to be the way they teach, and you have to follow that way only to get there. Otherwise, they just flip it. And so with my dad, I think when I started becoming my own person, he had a hard time accepting my ways. And because I came from a different generation and he didn't have a role model growing up, so he taught everything. He learned everything by himself, and he had very strong ways and very strict ways of teaching me the way he taught me, like, if I didn't get a line right or if I didn't practice well, then he would, lock me up in a room, and until I get it right, I wouldn't be out. So that was really, really, I mean, here people would say like, wow, that's really like abuse, and that's really strict. I understand that now, but growing up, I didn't understand that, because I thought, oh, that's just how it is. That's just how you roll. I think everybody's going through that. But I also didn't have friends because I wasn't allowed to. And I was only asked to focus on my music and my academics. So I was only doing that. And so I became like this scholar student who would score well in school, but also was really good at delivering and impressing dad. But
Well,
really deep down, I wanted to, become a fashion designer. But there were already a lot of female fashion designers, my dad said. And my dad was like, you're so good at music. You got to give this a true shot.
so geography and culture aside, I mean, teenagers are teenagers, so there's there's an innate sense of
Yeah.
rebellion there. But I'm just trying to picture this: were you working on the stuff that your dad made you work on, but then were you kind of sneaking off by yourself and working on your own stuff, or was he also aware that the whole time you were working on what you wanted to play?
I think there was a really clear point in my life, in my relationship with him, where I became such a rebellious, I guess, like you said, every teenager has this rebellious phase, right? With me, I was so depressed because I wasn't allowed to do so many things like other kids, like going out, hanging out with friends, or going out to movies, or going out to shopping, stuff like that, like normal kids do. I was channeling my depression in my practice. Music kind of became something that I would vent through. And same with fashion. I was cutting up my mom's saris and my dad's clothes, and stitching up different kinds of fabrics together and wearing those outfits on stage, as a way of showcasing, my creativity. And over time, I found similarity between fashion and music, which I'll explain in a bit. But really, I started having a lot of hardships with my dad, because he had a hard time accepting who I was and how fast I was growing. And so I moved out at the age of 17, between 17 18, I would say, because I couldn't take any more control from him. And I just could not understand his ways. I couldn't understand why he was so frustrated with me, because I was basically doing what he wanted me to do. And I was getting better at what I was doing. And I was becoming a successful musician. But the problem was that I was taking away his jobs and many other people's jobs. And so he had a lot of complex issues with me, even though he wanted me to become a bass player. It took a long time for him to accept me. I would say a good 2.5 to 3 years to accept me.
But he finally did come around.
Yes, he did. He did. I didn't speak to him for that time after I moved out, and then one day he called me and he said, in his own way, kind of apologized. Never really apologized, but in his own way, apologized and said, "I'm really proud of you, for the person that you've become today. And you're my diamond, and I always knew that. And the things I told you when you were leaving the house was my way of making you a rock, I guess." But yeah, really, really, because he told me that he told me that you're the dust of my feet, and you'll never be successful without me, stuff like that. And it became a challenge.
What about the community where you lived and the culture? Wasn't everybody like your dad? It sounds like there were friends that you knew or people that you knew that were going out and hanging out and having fun. So was your father an exception to that approach?
Yes, my father was definitely an exception, because he wanted me to excel at what he was trying to make me. He wanted me to not get distracted by boys, or other things, like in the music industry, obviously there's a lot of drugs and booze and stuff, and I was so young when I started. He didn't want me to get distracted by all those things, and so he was trying to make me follow a certain regime so that I stay on that path,
Mhm.
He wanted me to have a career so that later on I have a lot of time to do whatever the hell I want to, which I understand now. But as a kid, you don't understand those things, you know?
Well, as painful as that experience was, is there a part of you today that's kind of glad that he made you do that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely the things that he did could have been done in a different way, and maybe less traumatic way. But again, I don't fault him for that because, like I said, he didn't have a role model. His own mother died when he was only 6 months old. He had a stepmother who was never really a part of his life. His dad also died before he got married, so really didn't have any role model. He taught himself how to play the bass, really struggled his ass off to get where he was. He played with some of the biggest musicians in India. And I saw him work like, I saw him do the things with me that nobody else's father did. You know, he was more of a father and mother to me at the same time. My mother was taking care of the house, but he did some great things. Like I have memories of him teaching me how to ride the bicycle. You know, I have memories of him putting me to bed. I have memories of him coming back from work late hours, you know, working all day and still coming home and teaching me those lessons when really he could have been self-centered and not cared like other people, you know, because they're tired. Like other parents just leave their kids at home and don't care about it, you know. And I saw that happening with other kids, and they would complain like, yeah, I don't get enough time with my mom. She's always working, you know. But my mom and dad, they were working and giving me a lot of time. So, of course, they were frustrated because they didn't have a life of their own because they were trying to provide for me and my sister. So, I understood much later why those things happened and why I went through such a traumatic time because they needed therapy, you know, but towards the end of my relationship with him. I mean, I think by now everybody knows he died a couple of months ago, and I'm actually wearing his suit right now. You know, this is his suit. He and I had a beautiful relationship before he passed, and he was extremely excited and such a proud father, and he had a lot of love for his family, and he was just ready to enjoy with his daughters and wife. You know, so he changed a lot over the years, and he changed with the updated times that we are in right now. With everything changes, it can be a challenge. I mean, change is hard. You know, with the technology advancement, it's hard for that generation, the people from that generation, to keep up if you don't have, you know, people surrounding yourself with that can teach you, you know, those with those changes. So yeah, I don't fault him for anything, but yeah, it was definitely a traumatic time and an emotional time and a depressing time, but it was all worth it because where I'm at today, I channeled it very well in the right direction. So,
It must have been difficult for him, and it sounds like he worked very hard to be
yes.
accepting. What about coming to America? What were the circumstances? How old were you? Did you have anything here? Were you going to school? What made you? That's a long way from India.
Yeah. I think the first time I came to America was when I was 16 years old, I think, 16 or 15. It was I was doing the North American tour with A.R. Rahman. I was playing in his band. I worked with him for almost 8.5 years in his band and played for a lot of his movies and background scores for movies and stuff. And I got to see America. And I was like, the moment I landed here, I was just shocked and surprised because of the culture and how vocal people are, how expressive people are, and how there's so much freedom out here and nobody really stares at anyone. Everybody's able to freely walk and nobody gives a shit. You know, I was like, wow, I want to live here. You
Where
know,
were any particular part of America that you're referring to?
I mean, I was going to a lot of cities, like, you know, we were in Philadelphia, we were in Houston, we were in LA, we were in New York, Las Vegas. We played at some of the biggest venues, you know, like the Wembley Center, MGM Grand, and, you know, you name it, like some of the biggest arenas. And uh, for a young self at that time, I was just like so shocked, like, this is something people do. And there's so many people that work behind the scenes, you know, and that was all very new to me as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. And I was just fascinated. Wow, there are big teams backing up big artists. And it was something that made me want to go deeper into, go deep into and learn more about it. And so I started making more trips after that tour. And just for NAM, and sometimes I would get one-off shows in the US playing for somebody, in somebody's band or some recording project. And so I kept visiting in those trips, and I extended my trips and started learning more about America, and met more people, and people would start knowing about me more and more. And so it was beautiful. And the more I visited, the more I wanted to be here. And after my dad died, I was mentally, I think, ready to do something totally different, and something that I hadn't solidified before, because of the lack of, I guess, just guts, like, oh, I really want to do it, but I don't know if it's the right move. But after that passed, I was like, it's now or never. Maybe, most people wouldn't move countries after they lose their father, because my mom's there, my sister's there, and that's my family. That's really my family, only family. And of course, my husband. But my husband said, I think your dad would be really proud if you did this right now. And if you channel your energy right now into writing your music and, doing all the things that you've really wanted to, I think it could be something, but only if you want to do it. And I said, I think it's time. So I moved. We were exploring Atlanta and Nashville, because Nashville is the music city and the cost of living here is much lower compared to LA. Even though LA is kind of the hub, and we still are open to moving to LA, because it's only been a few months we've been here, and I've only lived here actually, honestly speaking, for a month, because I've been touring with Willow Smith most, like, the entire time, and with some other artists on one-off projects. But yeah, so I haven't really had the time to explore Nashville yet. So I want to spend more time here. And I don't mind the idea of touring and coming back to Nashville, because it's so peaceful and it's so quiet. And in the part where I live,
Yeah.
at least, I live away from downtown and Broadway, and I like the silence, because I was just sick of the honking on the streets of Mumbai. I was just really sick. It was such a trigger to my mind and my heart after losing my dad. I just couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to get away from noise, and interference. So I feel more, I mean, even though India is always going to be home and Mumbai is always going to be my home, I have a home there with my husband, and my mom is there, my sister's there. I feel like I have a better living experience and standard of living here out in the US, really anywhere. Nashville is for now, but I'm always open to wherever my life takes me. So,
For you. Okay, you mentioned the tour with Willow. You mentioned working on a new record. You mentioned a couple of one-off things. What else, if anything, is keeping you busy now these days?
yeah, I'm working for Darwin. He is a great guitar player and a writer, music director. And along with him works Simon Phillips, who is the producer of the album. We've recorded over 5 albums so far in the past 4 years. And I do a lot of writing when I can, like bass parts, and I have a lot of fun working with Simon and Darwin for that project. And a lot of people love that rock and roll, old school kind of music, and it's really fun for me. And apart from that, like I said, my second album I'm working on, and Willow is currently, a part of my, I guess, growth. And, I have such a fun time working with her for her music. The live shows are very different from the album versions. We rearrange a lot of her songs as a band together collectively, and we come up with different new parts to make it more fun. And she's a bold artist, and she's not afraid to take those risks, like few hours before the show. So it's really, really fun to improvise on the fly with her. And apart from that, I am also focusing on designing my own show. that I might be touring with in 2025. And yeah, just really focused on completing my second album. And I do a lot of recording sessions for various artists from all over the world. And so I have to finish some recording sessions today. And yeah, that's something I do on the side, regardless of what tour I'm a part of or what I'm doing. But yeah, I like to associate myself right now with projects that really excite me and don't overwhelm me too much, because I like to only do the projects that really excite me and are kind of out of the box.
Nice to be in a position to be able to do that. Well,
That's right.
you explained in pretty great detail your how you learned music and your father's influence. I want to ask you about advice for other people who are learning bass. Most of the people that come to For Bass Players Only is really a bass instruction site. And most
Yeah.
of the people, as I hinted at the beginning, are of the silver vintaged age. I have students in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I've got students in their 80s, both men and
Yeah.
women. They're not looking to make a career out of it. They just want, now's the time. They want to play some classic rock riffs with their friends, or
Yeah.
play some blues shuffles or some funky R&B, maybe some walking bass. And a lot of times when people get to that age, things like arthritis and tendonitis, maybe recovering from surgery. So I'm just telling you all this to give you a context, because
Yeah.
I want to ask you what advice you could impart to those people who want to learn to play the bass. What kind of goals should they have? What kind of questions should they be asking? What do you think they should be thinking about?
I think regardless of your age, I think your first focus should be health. you know Health first, then work, because if your health is not all right, you can't work, and you could be working yourself to death. And some people are workaholics like that, and I can be one of those for sure, because I indulge myself so much into what I'm doing that I forget when I ate last time, when I'm like super focused. It's not healthy. So I've grown to learn that, and through my experiences, I prioritize my health first now. And I make sure that I have 7 hours of sleep when I can. And when I cannot, I make sure I eat healthy, and I'm getting my proteins and vitamins. And technique, very, very important when you're playing, when you're practicing for hours. You got to make sure that your posture is correct and you're not digging in too much, because it's very easy to grind your teeth while playing, and that's not good. It's just like grinding when you're sleeping at night. It's very, very unhealthy. And same with your shoulders. It's very easy to get stiff on your shoulders when you're playing like this, because it's a very unusual posture for our body. And so you got to make sure you're moving around and not staying in one position for too long, because it's easy to get cramps and pains in different areas. And so, yeah, these are things, first of all, to take care of, health wise speaking. And mentally speaking, I think you have to allow yourself to study yourself, because everybody's different and everybody has different grasping powers. You cannot apply one formula to everybody. I have students and it doesn't work. I don't put my learnings on them and just expect that, oh, it's going to work for them just because it worked for me. It does not work like that. Every student is very different, and you have to study them as if you're the teacher. If you're the teacher, you got to study them and understand what works for them. And, some students are more smarter, some students are a little bit slower. And that's totally fine. And like you said, some students don't want to pursue music as their profession, and some students want to pursue music as their profession. So the teachings vary in those areas, because there are certain things that you got to take care of more if you want to pursue that as your career, because then there is no option B. But if you don't want to pursue it as a full-time thing, then there is option B. Then you can have a secondary job. But if it's something that you want to rely on for the rest of your life, then there is more responsibility and more things to take care of. And that was my life. There was no option B. Now I have option B and C that I can rely on. and that's why I can make those choices of associating myself with the projects that I really want to work with. But it takes a long time. It took me what 19 years to get there. So it takes a long time. It's an investment. It's an emotional investment. It's an investment of your life, and you got to be aware of what you want to do, how you want to design your life, what are the things that excite you, make you happy, take care of you mentally and physically. And so all these things you have to factor in before you get into something like music or any sort of art form, because it's not a 24 or it's not a 10 to 5 job. It's not a 10 to 7 job. It sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not good. Sometimes there are no gigs. Sometimes there are no recording sessions. So you gotta be smart about how you want to go about it. But the times we live in right now, I would say there are more opportunities and there are more chances of you landing a job, and more opportunities and chances of you finding yourself in some sort of balance where you can be happy and still do both the things, and more.
I think I love everything you just said. And I think maybe a little bit of that might have come from your father, but I sense that almost all of that you figured out on your own by yourself.
Yeah, from my experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and that's quite a moat of instruments you have behind you and in front of you. Can you tell me briefly about your gear? If you have a main go-to bass or two, or basses, strings, amps, effects, anything like that, can you give us an overview of what you play?
Sure. This is not even quarter of my collection here. This is just what I have in Nashville. If I showed you what I have in my Mumbai house, you would be like, "Whoa, how many bases are those?" I have over, I think, about 30 or more bases. Also, part of it is actually little less than a part of it is my dad's also, because after he passed, he left me all the bases that he owns. And yeah, but a lot of these bases here are from Mayonnaise. This is the Komodos Classic 5.
That's what
My
mayonnaise you
first,
said? Mayonnaise?
yeah, Mayonnaise. Yeah, Mayonnaise. Komodos Classic 5 Mayonnaise. This is the first bass that I got from them. I endorse them. They are incredible.
Yes.
I absolutely love them. And let's see. This is the latest uh, one that they sent me. This is a 6 string with Aguilar pickups on it. And yeah, they have a new kind of feature with the magnetic battery holder, which is really
Oh,
cool.
what a great idea. Why didn't
Yeah, I
anybody think
think,
of that before?
yeah. So this is really, really fun. Sounds incredible. I am not very used to playing 6 string because my fingers are really small, but I play it like this sometimes when I go up. I use it for recording sessions. I don't take it on road only because it's a little heavy and I am a tiny person. So I like to carry light. Um, let's see what I have here. I have another mayonnaise here, which is a custom one, and it's shiny purple glitter. And these have mayonnaise pickups. So this one sounds very different than the other two. Um, and then this one is also mayonnaise, which has, I think these have Musashi pickups, and the strings on this are DR strings, the neon ones. I'm
Yeah.
just trying them out right now. I haven't had a chance to try them yet, but normally, normally I play SID strings. Those are my favorite. I use the
Oh,
Rock Brights 0.45 to 105. And
SIT, you said?
SIT, yeah,
Yeah, that's
SIT.
an Ohio company, I think, right?
I don't really,
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they're from, but I've
Yeah.
been playing them for many years now. I absolutely love them. I use the Rock Brights, Fusion Rock Brights. I like the brightness they have and the resonance they have. And yeah, so I have like about, I think, three more mayonnaise bases back in Mumbai. One fretless, which is absolutely gorgeous. I love that red fretless. Most of you must have seen it on my Instagram, or I used it on Darwin's project too. So yeah, I love fretless. It's like one of my favorite things to play. Don't get to use it more often because the demand for fretless is a little bit less. But I started using this. I would say a few months ago. The NS Design sent this to me,
Yeah.
and I've played this. I've tried playing my album songs on these, and I made videos and I posted it on Instagram, and they went viral. um, I play it like a rock bass player. I would say that I don't play it like a jazz bass player. I play the upright bass like a funk prog rock bass player. And my technique, like all the upright bass players came after me, and they're like, "Oh, this is really bad for the body." I'm like, "I'm fine. I feel fine."
It looks like a Mark bass amp behind you there.
Yeah, I endorse these. I am using here. I mean, I don't use this because, I use in-ears for recording purposes. But I have a lot of head amps. I have this one, the gold line. I think this is called the vintage gold line one. This is like one of my favorites from Mark Bass. And then I have the Marcus Miller signature down here.
Yeah.
But on gigs, I use the Little Mark 800 tube. That is my top favorite from Mark Bass. So for all my gigs, I use that one, or the Evo one head, which has the two channels. And I absolutely love Mark Bass. The depth, the bottom end, the clarity, definition, just so crisp, perfect for the kind of tone I go for. And what else? I use Voodoo Labs. I use a lot of pedals lately from TC Electronics, Dark Glass Electronics, Source Audio.
What about
They're
21? You ever use the Sans amp?
Oh, Tech 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have used it. I have it here. Yeah, I don't take it on road with me because, the bands that I am a part of right now is more like prog rock. Like the Mamoji trio lineup that I have is more synth based. So I use Future Impact. It's like a boutique company which has like 100 stock synth sounds. And then I use the mono synth by Source Audio, which is incredible. Yeah, and I use Groove Gear for my, fret traps. I don't use fret traps very much, but sometimes when tapping and stuff, it's really great to use those fret traps. And I use the Groove Gear double capsulite case, which holds two basses, so great for tour, and you can put in your clothes and stuff. It's super easy. You can totally omit your, suitcase. Don't need it at all. And yeah, and new addition to my endorsement family, I would say, are Fat Cables. I've just collaborated with them to create signature Mohini Dey Fat Cables. And so I'm going to be launching them very soon. And I'm also working on my Mohini Dey signature straps in collaboration with LK Straps. So those two things are going to be released very soon.
That's great. Congratulations on all that.
Thank you. Thank you.
What about the future? I know we mentioned Greg Howe, and you mentioned the album, a few other things. Anything else coming up, or anything else that you've always wanted to do but you haven't done yet? Someday I'm gonna.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to release my fashion line. That's something that I really want to do. But, with all these things going on, it's not very easy to, work on everything simultaneously, because I'm also working on my Mohini Day signature mayonnaise base, so we're designing that right now. And yeah, what else? I honestly, I've never really planned my life. All the things that have happened in my life, I'm really grateful for and so thankful for. I have never planned my life. I just kind of go with the flow and play it by ear. And it has worked for me. I'm lucky. I'm lucky that way in that sense. But yeah, I find myself doing well that way, but just allowing myself to relax when things are not happening, and things just come my way when I keep doing what I'm doing. I have more time then to create my own music, because otherwise, when I'm playing for other people, I don't have very much time, you know? So yeah, but other than that, there are some things that I cannot talk about that's going to happen next year at the moment because they're confidential. But yeah, that's all I can share at the moment.
Okay, well, you just opened it up for a follow-up interview.
Okay.
I think I know the answer to this question. I have one more question for you, and you touched on it a few times, but it's kind of my signature sign-off question. What would you be if you were not a bass player? Something outside of music.
Yeah, fashion designer.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I would be in those, like in that category, kind of like, not maybe still in the music world, designing and styling the artists in the music world, you know, because it's close to, you know, fashion and style and art, and yeah, anything related to art. I would either be like an interior designer or a fashion designer. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your great stories and experience and opening it up, like I said, for a follow-up interview. So much stuff in the works, and we can't wait to hear to see and hear what is next for you. And we'll look forward to the new album and all the other stuff that you mentioned, plus all the stuff that you couldn't mention and didn't mention. Thank
Yeah,
you
thank
so
you.
much. Much luck
Thank
and
you so much. Thank
continued
you.
success to you always, Mohini Day.
Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, but you think you might be too old or your body won't cooperate, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community, a lot of them of the silver-aged vintage, and they are learning bass, having the time of their life playing music that they love. You should come join them and experience that incredible transformation for yourself. Remember, you're never too old to groove. Thanks again to my special guest, Mohini Dey. I will see you right back here, same time, same place next week. In the meantime, I'm John Liebman. Let's play bass.